All right. Well, good morning, everybody. And I guess good afternoon to you, Viola. So thank you for joining us. So I am very excited about this session. I think as many of you know, like Viola and I love to talk about this, thought leadership and SEO. Like we'll talk about it to anybody who will listen and how they are actually not in competition. They actually go together beautifully. And what we're going to do today, I actually love these sessions. This is something that Viola does regularly with her team, where they go out and find a site, like a brand, and they basically examine and reverse engineer how they were successful at SEO, because you can tell a lot about what people are doing. It's essentially this way of looking under the hood and seeing like, well, okay, I see how they got it. Now, how did they do that? And so I love these. I love these. Like usually you see these teardowns. Like I don't really love the culture of the teardown thing lately that I've been seeing, where people pull up people's landing pages and pick them apart in a negative way. This is us looking at this, who's winning and what can we learn from what the winners are doing. So yeah, again, I'm Mary Ellen. I'm the CEO of RepCap, and I love thought leadership content. Viola, I shall let you introduce yourself right quick.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm based in Berlin, and I just found out that the Christmas markets are starting today, so I'm very excited. As my profession, I run a digital marketing agency called FlowSEO, where we do SEO strategy and content marketing strategy for software startups. And in that, obviously, SEO can have the reputation of being very dry and abstract. And so that one made me decide to run these Decoding SEO Success Secrets series. And two, makes me really inspired about creating good content, meaningful content, opinionated content, and tell an interesting story. And so, Mary Ellen, thank you so much for having me today and inviting me.
So let us like talk. What are we going to talk about today? Right, we're talking about decoding the SEO secrets of BambooHR specifically. Why did you choose BambooHR as our focus?
One, I think like in the HR tech space, right? They're a name that you come across. But two is they've grown their organic traffic massively in the last 2 years. This is potentially a good moment to switch to the other slide deck.
Oh yeah. Let's bring these over, Michael. Yep. There we go.
Perfect. And I get us here. So the reason why I switched them specifically is that we all know this. It's kind of like who's good at SEO. You have some of these powerhouses, like whenever as a marketer, whatever marketing you type in, it's always HubSpot coming up. And so they've been there forever. They've always been there. They've been doing this for 15 years. And it can kind of seem like not achievable, not manageable to do something similar yourself. And what's interesting with BambooHR is even though founded in 2008, they got really aggressive with their SEO in the last 2 years. And they basically seem to have started doing some very aggressive SEO strategies like late 2019, 2020, and it's been really paying off for them this year. And so I think it's a good case study of someone who didn't need like 10 years to pull SEO off. And then the other reason is they're targeting an SMB market, and the CTA is kind of try for free. And so in many ways, that's also a game of like numbers and scale for them. And then so my assumption is that with all the other things that they're doing, with all the paid activities that they're doing, is that, they wanted to take some of that, that they basically underutilize SEO before to get that scale and get that traffic. And so I think they're a really beautiful example. And so what I've done is I essentially did a content audit of their site. And so I'm obviously not part of BambooHR. I can't log into the Google Analytics, but I can see from the outside, how are they performing? What are they ranking for? How much traffic do they have, et cetera? And so we pulled a complete content audit and fed it with data from a bunch of SEO tools. And that's what I'm going to present today. And so in that, we'll quickly talk about when is the right time to start doing SEO as a startup. We talk about their glossary or their SEO hub, where a bunch of their SEO content lives. And then we talk about ranking and conversion. And I think, Mary Ellen, I'm super curious to kind of like bounce back and forth, on this. And then also for everyone listening, please put your questions into the chat so we can understand what's interesting for you and what you would like to learn as well. So when is the right time to start doing SEO? I think it's always an interesting question. It's probably a particularly interesting question right now. I was making a LinkedIn post about it this morning, which is when we're talking about economic distress and, you know, how to survive and how to structure your marketing team, etc. Like, is it the right time to do SEO in 2023? Yes, no, maybe. And here are some considerations that I would like to give people that are working in a startup. It's like, one, SEO basically needs 2 resources and 2 partnerships and 2 allies, one of which is content marketing. And so SEO is a game of growing the size of your website, growing the amount of pages, growing the amount of long form articles. And so the first question is, are you already producing a lot of content? What type of content are you producing? And so this is why I love partnering with RepCap, because then I know we have a great stream of content coming in every month. And basically content is an SEO's best friend. And so that would be the first question. If you don't have a regular publishing schedule, if you're not already putting out blogs and guides, etc., if your website is, let's say, under 50 pages, you're probably under-resourced to start doing SEO effectively. And then similarly, does marketing own or have the capability to make changes to the website? You know, that those are 2 kind of like resourcing requirements to start thinking about SEO. And then the other thinking is SEO is a really great channel to scale what works. So if you don't have product market fit yet, you might be changing your product offering, your messaging, your ICP a lot. And that kind of like zigging and zagging is very hard for Google to understand and build relevance for. And so
for what it's worth, it's also hard for people to understand. Like,
exactly.
It's also hard for people to say, if you start thinking, Google's getting closer and closer to what we understand.
Yep.
If anything, Google can figure it out faster.
And so I usually tell people, it's like, as you're working towards product market fit, like, you know, focus on your demand gen, your sales enablement content, your performance marketing, figure out what works. And when you figure out what works and what people like and what people convert off, that's when you want to start pushing for SEO, and you want to do more of what works. And then similar, a lot of talk in the SEO world is about domain rating, domain authority. But typically speaking, it is good if you already have a flow of natural links coming in from your PR, from appearing on podcasts, webinars, etc. And so thought leadership and having an opinion and talking about it in different places, you know, there's an added SEO benefits by having people pointing towards it. And so the 4th reason then is like internal alignment, like an agreement that, 1, you have the resources available, you have the product market fit, and you know, you have a message that you want to scale, and the site has a little bit of momentum because it's already getting links. And usually when these click in, it's a really good time for SEO. And this typically means if you're very early stage, it's not the time. If you're a few years old or you're around your series A, B, C, it's probably starting to be a really good time to really aggressively invest into SEO like BambooHR did. Anything?
I would say this actually is something that I saw your LinkedIn post this morning, and I knew that like this kind of I saw that match with your general philosophy about this. But one thing it made me realize, because you mentioned something in passing, talking about going into like sort of this economic uncertainty and people deciding what they're going to invest in, if they should invest in SEO. I will tell you that SEO, if you have an existing team, and I don't even mean like from a startup thing, like think of even like at the enterprise level, you know, good sized mid market, like you do have a lot of content. You would probably see the highest ROI. If your budget gets squeezed and you're like, what am I going to do? I would tell you to stop publishing new stuff, like slow it down. And I would tell you to do SEO and go and focus on updating everything you already have. That is actually where I would like bring that in, you know, because you want to talk about ROI on content. It is so much easier to take a piece like that. You will kind of dig around into a content audit and you'll find out you have a piece of content that's ranking 50th on a good keyword, like a keyword that is for your ICP. I can turn that 50 into a 3, a lot faster than I can take a new piece of content and make it to 50.
Yeah.
Like for most high value targets. It's also a way to save money. If you're thinking ahead, you can cut your PPC money. Basically, you can stop paying for ads if you're really smart about this, but update what you have. It isn't about pumping out new. I feel like Google doesn't really reward us for pumping out a bunch of new stuff anymore, but maybe, what do you think? Like,
so one, I would say, I totally agree. So if you're an established company and let's say your website has 500 pages, 800 pages, 1500 pages, content updates are an SEO's best friend. And there's probably a lot of like unleveraged potential within your existing content. And that potential is twofold. It's like, one, it's the stuff that's already ranking well. And when was the last time that you looked at it in terms of messaging, call to action, etc.? So that's one. I think the true low-hanging fruit in SEO are actually the articles that are already ranking and bringing traffic, and then you want to optimize further. And then two, like you said, what are these articles that are hovering somewhere on page 2, on page 3, on page 4? So Google is liking them a little bit, but not quite. And probably that's because it's an article, it's from 2019. It's a little bit too short. It hasn't been updated in a while. It's not as in depth as it could be. And so content updates and expanding things that you have, getting rid of all your product release notes from 2016.
Right.
If you have the habit of every spring writing, about a specific topic, every autumn you have a back to school campaign, or every new year you have like an onboarding campaign, etc., right? And then you have been putting out that content every year, but it's always the same topics, like merging all that stuff together into the one ultimate guide. It's going to do good. And so a nice like content pruning, cleanup, merging, and optimization is a good way to strengthen your SEO. And SEO is a distribution channel, right? So yeah, definitely.
All right, let's talk about Bamboo. Like that, we kind of set our, you know what our philosophy about this. Although Lisa says, honestly, hearing you guys validate my strategy never gets old. We're here for you, Lisa. We're here for you. All right, let's talk about what Bamboo did. What did they do that worked so well?
Melissa just said, so updating old content with recent or updated keywords will go a long way. I wouldn't necessarily say that I would update the target keyword. So if the target keyword is like employee onboarding plan or employee onboarding plan best practices, like that keyword wouldn't change. But maybe page 1 has changed since you've written the article 3 years ago. Maybe the search intent is slightly different. Maybe your competitors are putting up templates. Maybe your competitors have written a more in-depth guide with more graphics, and you only have 800 words with no image. So the keyword would stay the same, but the quality of the article would go up. All right. So talking about content and content powerhouse. So BambooHR is a content powerhouse because SEO content is typically long form and evergreen. And so this is a chart. This is all the type of pages that they have on their website. And typical SEO content are blogs. And you can see 25% of their website are blogs. Glossary pages, encyclopedia, long form, kind of like hubs, which is also 25% of their website. And then also product pages, which only make 1% of their website, but they have really, really good keywords. So about half of the content basically lends themselves to SEO. And so if we look at the numbers of like how much stuff do they actually have, they have about 350 posts on the blog. But interestingly, they have that SEO powerhouse, their Glossary, also has 330 articles. And this is especially interesting because they only started doing that in 2019. And so they really,
I'm sorry. Viola, when you say long form, because I think this is one of the things that often shocks people, because you just mentioned like a link kind of casually. I think this really surprises people who haven't paid attention to this in a few years. How long is long form?
It depends. So the way I like to look at it, I look on average word count on page 1. And so typically for more informational, educational, top of funnel terms can easily be 2,000 words, 3,000 words. Landing pages can sometimes if there's landing pages on page 1, you can maybe get away with like 800, 1,200 words or so. But typically SEO content is really long. It is really, really long. And so, yeah, that's an entire discussion on this in terms of like the philosophy and where we're heading with this, etc. Google released what they call the helpful content update in September, which is a lot about user friendliness. And I do think like with time, we'll also see shorter articles rank again, but right now, usually bigger is better, just in terms of like word count. And I think in many ways, a longer article has the opportunity to use the keyword more often in a non-spammy and natural way. And so often today, there's a preference for really long articles.
I mean, if somebody tells me they want to do SEO content, I mean, before I even look at the specific recommendations like that we would get, say, from a brief from you, I can already tell them it's going to be at least 1,500 words. 2,500 is more common. There are some keywords that if you intend to rank, and also a piece can rank on more than one keyword, which is something I think you talk about a little bit later. And I understand that people often have this objection to this. They think, well, nobody's going to read all of this. And like, well, no, they're not. They're looking for this one thing and they're going to find that and they're going to read the part. Google will actually even link, send them straight to the piece. And it's okay. People who find our content don't read it the same way that we do as the people who make it. So, yeah. Agreed.
I think I have a slide coming up, like in 1 or 2 slides with the word count, so we can look at that. So here's an example this is a chart on the right, which the top says kind of like page 1, position 0 to 9, page 2, 10 to 19, etc. And so we can see actually a third of their blog articles rank on page 1 with their top keyword. And again, as Mary Ellen said, an article can easily rank for 20, 50, 200 keywords that are all satisfying the same search intent. Google is really good at understanding search intent. And so you'll rank for a lot of keywords. But in this case, 33% of their articles have a top keyword on page 1 and 17% on page 2. And only about 20% of their articles never started ranking. And keep in mind, an article might also be Happy Halloween. That was never meant for SEO to begin with. But so you can see the fact that so many of their blog posts are ranking is not a coincidence. And, there might be a few Happy Halloween or product release notes that never get picked up, but their content is heavily geared towards ranking. And then I think even more exciting than blog content is the product pages. So it's a similar chart here. Almost 90% of their product pages have a keyword on page 1. And if you look here on the left, I obviously don't mean a branded keyword. There's a couple that have like a BambooHR, HRIS. There's a couple of branded keywords in here, but obviously the goal is to start ranking for non-branded keywords. And so they've been super aggressive and they've been super successful at ranking for these keywords, which is usually what everyone is after. And so how did they manage to rank so well? Especially on a product page, when oftentimes you want to write your product page for trust, for conversion, for your messaging. And often people shy away from SEOing their product page very heavy because it needs to be very long. BambooHR has not shied away from this. So only 5% of the product pages are under 1,500 words. Almost all of their product pages are 1,500 words or longer. So there's about 66% of between 1,500 and 2,000 words. And they've also been like very aggressive with putting their keyword into the headline 1, into the content. They're not hiding behind complicated messaging. They have the keyword right there. And I think that also has to do with the SMB market and try for free CTAs. Like Mary Ellen, I think you can speak to that around clarity on your product pages.
So I keep hitting mute to try to make sure that I'm not like giving you echo, but no, clarity will be clever every time when it comes to SEO. And we often want to do like fun things and plays on words, but people don't search for your wordplay, and they aren't. If you put that, you can be really careful, like just how you use that. So like that is a way you will win that game. Like it's the same thing with your positioning that you put in the H1 on your homepage. Like think what for whom, what is somebody going to be looking for here, and make that in the H1. We call that top headline. Like has to be to look like that. And I think it's also interesting that you mentioned this about the product pages, because this is, while I normally, thought leadership content is like my expertise, we also do quite a bit of copy around messaging and product pages, and people often are afraid to write long for product pages. And instead I'll encounter these pages where they've given every sort of piece of their platform or their solution or their service has its own page, and it's really thin. And I really, like, one of the things I really push people to do is to consolidate that, because if you can bring that and make one nice meaty piece, like, that has a much greater chance of being found on a transactional search term than a thin piece. And actually, can we talk about intent for just a second? Because I think that's something else that throws people off. Like, we think about what some intent reflects how people, what they want to do when they sit down and start searching. What are the different intent things and what are they usually aligned to?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So there's a few different ways to think about it, but I think the easiest way to think about it is kind of like what aligns with the kind of like top, middle, and bottom funnel idea. So kind of like top of funnel, we usually call it educational or informational. These are people looking to learn. So they might be looking for performance management, best practices, performance management methodologies. So they're educating themselves on the subject. They're not necessarily looking to buy a solution. Then obviously we can go deeper from there. People might be performance management best practices, performance management systems, etc., where you can already see, okay, they're trying to implement it. Eventually we hit a phase that people often call a commercial investigation, which is kind of like a research and comparison phase in terms of making a buying decision. So there people might be obviously looking for best performance management software, which though in a B2B context, I'm not really sure that, this is what people do. For maybe an app, if you like best time tracking app, maybe there. But other things that people look, it's like performance management and integrations. For example, they make like buying guide for performance management, or performance management software for frontline, or performance management for SMB. And so they're much closer already, but they're still comparing. And then often we say like a transactional keyword, etc., is more something straight up: performance management software, performance management platform, enterprise performance management platform. The lines between commercial investigation and transactional are blurry. And the best way to figure this out is by typing the actual keyword, putting it into Google, and seeing what comes up. And so if page 1 is literally 10 results that are all listicles, 45 best time tracking apps, if page 1 is completely occupied by G2, Capterra, Trust Radius, then it's probably Google understands it more as a commercial investigation, people comparing intent. If you see it like G2, Capterra, these guys are probably never going to go away. They're always going to be there for these type of queries. But if you see page 1 being more half and half, like you see your competitors' landing pages, you see competitors' home pages, etc., this is probably more like people seem to be ready to kind of like go and book a demo and make a CTA. Is probably a bit more transactional. And so this also tells you that if you type performance management software and there's not a single landing page or product page on page 1, you're probably going to have a very hard time ranking your product page. And so you want to make sure that there's other product pages there. That's actually a good sign. It means that Google is ranking product pages and potentially could rank yours. If there's only listicle and G2, you're probably better writing a buying guide. Again, that's in long and meaty. Yeah. All right. Let's have. So this is probably good. This is probably a good way to compare this. And so a typical kind of informational, educational keyword, we call that a glossary, or lives for BambooHR lives in their glossary. Now, don't get confused. Glossary sounds like an lexicon, which at first glance seems, like a short definition, just like one sentence. But really what their glossary, what their lexicon is, it's a place for them to put SEO content at scale. And this is where a lot of their educational and transactional stuff lives. and where they get rankings for. And actually 75% of their glossary pages are currently on page 1. And so let's have a look. So when you go to the website, you click on glossary, you see this. Now the question is like, why would someone make a page that kind of like looks like this? And the reason is, this is not really the user journey for this, right? We don't expect someone who's already on the website to go click glossary and then kind of like read through HR terms. The funnel basically works the other way around. People are trying to get knowledge and educate themselves. They type something into Google search. They come into the blog post or glossary entry. They read, they learn, and then from there, they go deeper into the site. And so this is why it is kind of a pillar page. It is a hub page. It's just not very beautifully designed, but the goal is really for the individual pages to rank and kind of like drive the journey from there.
I actually think this is really important. You just said something actually, Viola, that I say like once a week, and I just want to hear, in the same way that Lisa, you found it very gratifying to hear us say that validate your strategy, you just validating this for me, reminding people that people like the pages that you think people are landing on when they come to your site, especially if you're good at SEO, it's not actually usually going to be, oh, I'm going straight to this product page or I'm going to this homepage. They are going to be looking for information and landing on these like outlier pieces and coming in. This page, this hub, nobody's going to the glossary and clicking through. I don't really expect that to happen. I actually don't even expect someone who hits your homepage already knows that you exist and is coming, they're looking for something, right? So we keep that nice and tight. But it's mostly people coming from other places and then coming in, and we got to make sure. I think sometimes we put a lot of work into what happens on the homepage on this assumption that people are going to start there and go out. It is not actually the front door of your business. It's really not. Like, it's the sign that's kind of out there. Most people are coming in sideways and from the back and all these different directions, and we have to think more about what happens when they land on that. So anyway, you just like touched on something that has been like critical, like in some of the conversations I've had this week. So
yeah, exactly. And the better you get at SEO, the more of this blog posts, glossaries, your pillar pages are going to rank, and the more of these pages are, the first touch point. And so here, just a quick reminder, this was not really a glossary. Like I said, again, these pages are really long. They're even longer than the product pages. So the red slice here is 2,500 words to 3,000 words. And then the yellow slide, almost 50%, 3,000 words to 3,500. So this stuff is really, really long.
Worst dictionary ever.
Exactly. And to Lisa's point, that also says include links, different chapters, etc. And so actually, so I said this was started only in 2019 and then built out in 2020, 21. But if you see the organic traffic chart in the beginning, what I showed really took off in 2022, which tells you something about the lag time of SEO. When you start doing it for the first time, it takes time to build momentum. But they actually put that up in 2020 and 21. And you can see that most of the glossary pages actually also have about between 0 and 20 links, and then a handful of them even more than 20 links. So not only do they write super meaty, they also specifically build links to all of them. And so you can really see it's a strong SEO play. It's really meant for SEO. And so actually I was talking about glossary also earlier today. And just one note is you don't have to call the thing glossary. I actually probably would recommend not to, but you can call it your learning hub, your resource center, whatever feels more appropriate. Really don't think that you need to stick with the word glossary or lexicon. It's really just a hub with a lot of information for people to educate themselves. But actually there's 3 HR glossaries that gotten really, really strong over the last 3 years. One is the BambooHR glossary, about 300 pages, about 10,000 keywords on page 1. Personio, which is a European HR tool, has about 240 pages, around 2,000 keywords on page 1. And then there's also Eddy, they call it Encyclopedia. They have 500 pages and also 2,300 keywords on page 1. That's that pink chart on the bottom. And so BambooHR is by far the strongest ones in terms of like winning rankings with this strategy. But then also keep in mind the last 2 columns are new now. How many employees does BambooHR have on LinkedIn? 1,300. Whereas, for example, Eddy only has about 73. And so the fact that Eddy has been able to pull so many pages as such a young company with a small team is very, very impressive. And so, yeah, if you want to look more into that stuff, PersonEO and the Glossary for SEO, there's a couple of blogs on our website that you can check out. So a few considerations when you want to build a hub for SEO like this. And one of the questions I was asked earlier today is like, why would I even want to do something like a glossary? Could I not just put all my SEO articles on the blog? And to this I say you absolutely can. Blog posts are very easy. Almost everyone in their CMS, knows how to put them up. It's very effective. So nothing's holding you back from publishing SEO content on the blog. A blog post, if it's long and good and meaty and well-designed, can rank as well as a page. That doesn't make a difference. The reason I think why people tend to glossaries is because the scale at which they put pages up, 200 pages a year, 500 pages a year. And so it's just a place to put up SEO content at scale. Because if you're writing company announcements, thought leadership articles, product feature announcement, and they also go on the blog, and then tomorrow you publish 20 SEO posts, your thought leadership article and your company update get like drowned on the blog because of all that SEO content coming up. And so the main reason why people put up SEO content in a glossary, it's scalability, and it does create a nice topical hub. All of a sudden, all your HR terms live in one part of the website. It's really good for internal linking. It's really good for structure. And it just allows you to have other content types on the blog and make sure that they actually get like seen properly. A glossary is essentially like any other SEO project in many ways. You want to start with keyword research. I'm not going to go into the details on this here, but the idea is basically keyword research is your market research. And at this point, you want to get any potential keyword that your buyers might be interested in. And you're trying to cast a very wide net, and you're trying to understand where's the search volume, where's the difficulty, what are competitors doing, where do others have visibility, where we don't. And just really, keyword research is a research and analysis document. And from there, you want to prioritize, like what are the keywords that are most important because you can talk about your product in a natural way. What are topics that are crucial to your buyer, and you can maybe name your product in passing. And then, what are other topics that the buyer researches, but you maybe can't mention your product. And then obviously, typically, you will want to prioritize by kind of SEO metrics like search volume and difficulty. And kind of like if you're starting SEO new, I would recommend publishing the lower difficulty pieces first, and then work your way up to harder, more competitive terms, because sometimes the keyword is crucial to you, but page one is so competitive, you're going to be banging your head against the wall for the next 3 years. And so it's better to start getting wins with lower difficulty keywords, start getting traction, start getting momentum, so that it then can take off. From there, you'll create a content plan. And then 2 things I want to talk about is page layout and URL structure, and then content publishing and optimizing. So 1, page layout, you can obviously go simple, do a glossary, ABCD, that's fine. I really like the Eddy one where you can filter by topics. So if someone does come to your glossary from your website, they have a nice user experience too. And so I probably prefer that in terms of like layout. And then something that also, Lisa has talked about, like for skimmers and like visually pleasing. If we're writing 3,000 words, let's absolutely make sure we have a nice table of content. Let's make sure we match our CTAs. PersonEO is really, really good at this, for example, potentially beating BambooHR at this, I would think. And then add related posts that fit as well. And this is how you can tie in your use cases, your thought leadership articles, other blog posts that you're putting out into that glossary. Because again, people land on the glossary for the first time, and then ideally you want them to go somewhere. So don't leave it up to them to get lost or not go anywhere. If you give them like matching resources, templates, or related articles about that topic, they have the opportunity to dig deeper into your site, you know, from that initial article. So yeah, that would have been my only question with BambooHR specifically. So they have 245 pages on page 1 since the beginning of the year. That's an estimated 414,000 users per month from search for the glossary alone. They basically have a very simple, so for example, that's their onboarding article that goes through the employee onboarding software, which I think you may be asking for marriage on the first date. I would love to know more about the conversion and how they do things. Yeah, personal favorite is probably Personio in terms of like how they navigated that. And so that's just the reminder that ranking is one thing, getting organic traffic is another thing. Organic success is another thing, which has to do a lot with conversion and what are we doing out of these clicks that people are coming. How can you convey trust? And this is obviously where all of these other factors come to play, because why is BambooHR potentially converting on all these glossary pages? It's not because they have the perfect matching CTA on it. It's because people have trust in the brand. They know them from other places. They've seen them in ads. They have great reviews on all the platforms. And so they're just one that keeps popping up across the buying cycle. They run virtual summits, they do webinars, etc. And so if their glossary pages do convert very neatly, that's probably because of that brand equity and trust that they have with all of their demand gen activities. But generally speaking, like refining CTAs a little bit more would be my recommendation. All right. Mary Ellen, do you want to talk to me a little bit about some of your thoughts and maybe original fears around SEO content?
Oh my God, I'm over those fears.
And how does it all come together, basically?
Yeah, so I think one of the things, I think sometimes people look at this and they hear that message about go look and see what's ranking, and they think that means they should go copy it. I'm actually not, we're not telling you to go copy it in that sense. That you should look and take inspiration, because that tells you, you can learn what Google thinks about it. But what you do want to do is see what people are saying, and then you want to make sure that what you're saying is different. So the question, like you could ask a question about, in case of BambooHR, it could be like a question about managing, leaves of absence. And the way that your company might answer that question should reflect your expertise. So my goal, like one of the tests that I look at is I come in and I look at the content that is presented, like if I'm auditing an existing one, and I ask myself, if I took this content and I copied and pasted it onto your competitor's website, would anyone be able to tell the difference? And I think sometimes people mistakenly think that SEO content is all going to look samey like that, but it isn't. It's like, so the parts that might be the same might be the header, where you have to say what is a leave of absence versus vacation. The way that you answer that in your messaging and in your voice, that should be quite different. So use the research and the things that are out there for you to position yourself as different. Right? Like you can tweak it and put your messaging in there. So the SEO will tell you what to write about, like what question people have. And it is up to you within your messaging and your thought leadership to answer that question, reflecting your expertise. Content with a position actually does really well. Like people think that SEO content is inherently dry. It's not. It's not at all. Like it's only dry because scared people are writing it. It's only dry when cowards write it, basically. So you can take that same question and put it out there. Like if you've got a stance on something, you've got a position. It doesn't all have to be like this kind of how-to type content. You can take a turn and like say something interesting. Like don't be scared to do that. It won't hurt your SEO. As long as you still follow the basics, right? Like still get your headers right, make sure that you're using your keywords and things like that. But like don't be scared to say something. In fact, it's better if you do, because when you say something, you get backlinks. And backlinks, are what that's the real lifeblood of SEO.
Yeah.
Like that's really that's the signal that Google cares the most about. Actually, it's like how many people are linking to this and how reputable is it?
Yeah.
Are people staying on this page? Those are things you can accomplish by making sure that you say something interesting. Because if you say boring things, they're going to leave, and you're going to just keep going, and then you're off the page. You're off the search.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's like the biggest struggle with SEO is like balancing that, right? We look at average word count, we see what other people are doing, and I think the tendency is always writing the same article over and over again. And a lot of SEO content is incredibly similar. But that is an opportunity that if you do SEO content well, people will recognize and people will remember. And so let's see. Exactly. So would anyone notice? We have that. So I bring you this analogy. It's like your SEO briefing is really meant to be a skeleton. So it talks to you about the keywords to use, the word count to use, the type of page that is most likely to succeed, but it is a skeleton for you to flesh out. And the example is this is a picture of Taylor Swift with her hit song, Shake It Off. And obviously that is a girly pop song. It's like upbeat. She's dancing in the video. She's really cute. And it's very, very distinct. And what I didn't realize until earlier this year is that kind of melancholic rock singer Ryan Adams has actually covered the entire Taylor Swift album. And so he has a Shake It Off song. And it has the same skeleton. It has the same lyrics. It has the same melody. However, firstly, it's a male singer versus a female, but it's also a sad, slow, melancholic song. And when you listen to the two, you would never, not for 1 second, confuse the one for the other. They're so obviously different. And so hopefully that is the way you can start thinking about your SEO content briefing. What you can do is like, can you make it so unique that it's very clear if you're the Taylor Swift or the Ryan Adams from that SEO content briefing? And so in reality, if I give two websites the same SEO briefing, I think the tendency is for them to want to write a very similar article. But the idea would be that with a refined message, with a refined perspective and opinion, you'll be able to be as different as Taylor Swift or Ryan Adams. And if you don't like that analogy, another one is thinking about movies. You have the traditional Cinderella movie, right? It's a cartoon. And then you have the live action film as well. And obviously they follow the same storyline. They're even wearing kind of the same costume, but not for 1 second. If on your TV, you flickered into one of those movies, you would doubt, which one it is, if it's the old cartoon or the new live action film. And so that's the mindset I would like for people to approach.
I mean, actually, I want to go back to that process thing that you were describing, and we can take some questions too. But
yeah,
you were mapping out like those 6 steps to do this. Like, which part of that do you spend the longest on? Like you were talking about the research, because we were like, oh, we're not going to go into that. And it's like, well, that's because I kind of know why, but like,
yeah,
what takes the longest? Like, where as an SEO, because I think sometimes people also are not quite sure what it is that SEOs even do. Like in 2022, it's evolved a bit. It's not purely technical. There's a lot of research. And tell me about that process a little more.
So I would say the longest is probably, I would say in the research, prioritization, and content planning phase. And the reason is because in a research phase, I really want to cast a very, very wide net. So I want to look at competitors, but I also want to look at blogs and magazines. I want to see when people talk on Slack, what do they talk about? What do they talk about on Reddit? What do they talk about on LinkedIn? What are maybe some of the documentation that sales has that tell us about objections or competitors that people mention or benefits that people want, integrations that people want. And so in the beginning, it's a whole lot of reading to kind of like get a lay of the land. And then you're trying to map that land basically with search trends, with keyword difficulty, with page types on page 1. And then prioritizing that by what actually makes sense for the business. I would say this is probably where most of my time goes. And then what's probably surprising, we're an SEO agency, but we actually don't offer content writing, which often confuses people. It's like, oh, if content is king and queen of SEO, why are you not writing? But I think the ultimate way to scale SEO is, working either with your in-house content team or a great, content agency, and then basically teaching them SEO principles, because it is much harder to write a good, interesting, unique article than it is to kind of like tweak some headlines and keywords for SEO in the end. And so I think part of the job is creating the mindset and awareness for writers, like how to use the SEO briefing, how to think about what can they do or not do, can they remove headlines, change sections, add sections, etc. Like that process of getting on the same page, like how we go about that, I think that is definitely I don't want to say time consuming, but crucial part of the process to then scale that. But because like I said, it is easier to teach these like SEO tweaks to a writer than it is to learn to write incredibly well. And so that's the biggest leverage, I would say, that this is that relationship. I did want to answer to one question. I think I'm not sure if it disappeared from the chat now, which was that question is like, writing good content future-proofs you for the Google algorithm or something along those lines. And I would say directionally, yes. So with all the changes that Google has been doing in the last few years, they all go towards better understanding of search intent, less focus on keywords, more focus on topics, more focus on entities in general, more focus on, someone was mentioning EAT, expertise, authority, and trust, and understanding proper expertise from the authors and who's qualified to talk about this. So directionally, writing a good, in-depth, well-researched piece will future-proof you from algorithm changes, because that's the direction where Google is going, and that's what they want you to do. That being said, especially in the last 3 years, Google mainly rolls out what they call core algorithm updates. So it's not like in the past where updates were around specific things like keyword stuffing or keyword over-optimizing, spammy backlinks. There's a core algorithm update, and it's shuffled the search results around quite a bit. And sometimes even some sites that have done a really good job have been kind of like hit, and you don't quite know why. But directionally, you're on the safest side with good quality, well-researched content. Can there be the weird outlier, rando thing that happens that still knocks you off doing a Google algorithm? Nothing is ever, nothing is ever like impossible to happen. But directionally, that's what Google wants you to do. That's what the helpful content update is about. This is what Google talks about with EAT, and they just reaffirmed. People thought that expertise, authority, and trust only matters in your money, your life, so financial and medical topics. And just this week, Google talked about, no, they actually care for all queries about expertise, authority, and trust. And so directionally, that's a future-proof strategy. And sometimes if you get a dip from a core algorithm update, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to change strategy. Sometimes it's also a matter of kind of like, if you're doing the right things, you have great page performance, a good layout, great content, it's maybe a matter of like waiting for the next core algorithm update, unfortunately. Of course, if your site is slow or has weird indexing issues and that stuff, then you obviously want to fix that. And that might be the reason why you got affected. Rant over. Let's see. I think that's kind of it.
Okay, well, there's another really good question here, and I think this is a good one, and I think I'm probably the one to answer this, so that you can tell me how other people do it. With long form SEO content, how do you keep it from not getting redundant? I struggle with writing long pieces that aren't just saying the same thing over and over. That is the sound of Claire on our team, who writes about HR stuff, like crying in the corner. She didn't write that question, but she could. It is true. It's hard. First, I'm just going to acknowledge like what it is very challenging. And the secret is actually just to keep going deeper. And if you are truly an expert, if you have the proper alignment between like what the keywords that you're pursuing and your business, like you shouldn't have to do this by yourself, for one. Like you should get with your product people, get with like the other kind of subject matter experts in your business, The story here, as always, is in the specificity. This will also keep you from being the same as what everybody else is writing, that unique perspective that you're going to bring to it. So it is true that you can only answer the question of what is performance management software or what is HR onboarding software, like so many ways, but there are different ways that you can begin to frame things. So like asking the question around the benefits of something is a different question from the how to do something. So that's one way you can begin to kind of split those out in your brain. And so like I can make a short version, there could be an overview of a topic, say there's an overview of onboarding software. Okay, that's a big piece, right? But then within that, the benefits of onboarding software can be a short section in one piece, and then it can be its own piece. I could write 10 benefits of onboarding software that would just go super, super deep in that topic. And then there would, I would say the good news is there is a natural limit to like that you're going to hit in terms of how deep you have to go, and it should be somewhat set by the search volume. So if something only has 2 or 3, searches for it, like, I mean, that tells you some things about how inherently interesting it is, so you'll keep going and keep going. And I think that you will actually, it takes longer to run out of juice than you think you do if you get really into a topic. Because what is the saying? It's like the riches are in the niches. And that is true in SEO too. So if you get a nice little bucket, but just keep on going. So you can reframe it. There's how to, there's benefits of, there's ways to, there's strategies versus tactics. I mean, there's a few, as long as you make careful distinctions. One of my pet peeves as an editor is a list that says like benefits of it says how to do something, but then it's just a benefits of article. Like I can't, I don't like it as a reader and I don't like it as an edit. You promised me something different from what you gave me. But like give yourself permission. What can be one paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs or some bullets in one article can almost always become a whole article. And I promise you that whenever you go to build out, if everybody else has 5 benefits and when you push yourself to have 7, that 6th and 7th thing is going to be actually what's unique to your business. If everybody else, the first 3 things are going to be the same for everybody. It's only when you push yourself past that line that it gets differentiated. So, but it is hard. It's hard. It's absolutely hard.
I have such respect for content marketers and writers, for putting these articles out and staying creative and motivated about it. And I just want to expand on a thing that you said with this idea of like, you don't have to do it on your own. So I think one of the things that we do in other articles is having a more journalistic approach. And in SEO, we almost never do that. And so don't be afraid to weave in expert quotes or opinions from experts into your piece. Don't be afraid that when you're talking about an abstract topic like onboarding, to talk about the difference when onboarding, let's say, a remote knowledge worker versus onboarding a frontline worker, and then tying that into a story or example, from your ICP, etc. Like, it does not always need to say top level and abstract. You are allowed to show examples and case studies and quotes from people in the field and for the audience that you're writing for. And so that's very much an encouragement. It doesn't always need to stay dry and abstract and long. And I think a lot of length can come from that color and nuance and storytelling as well.
Is there any other questions that y'all have for us? We do have like 5 minutes here. Take a look here because I think there's some in the chat.
If not, I have a question for you, Mary Ellen.
This is also how Viola and I actually hang out. We're both like super busy, and so we just schedule events together.
And then we ask each other questions. Exactly.
The question is going to be something like, I'm coming to New Orleans in the spring. Which festival do you recommend that I attend?
I'd be down for that. I'd be down for that.
And the answer is Festival International. But okay, so what's your SEO question?
So let's say BambooHR, right? Or Personio, et cetera. These people are banging out, 200 articles in a year. So my assumption is they're probably specifically growing the team for an initiative like that. And so do you have any tips in terms of like, what are you looking for in a B2B writer or content marketer? I know you've gone to your agency a lot. Like, how should people think about finding someone to help them with that type of like massive content project?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that even if you want to hire an agency or hire a freelance, the biggest mistake I see people make is like, let's say if you're the marketing person and you go, we're going to get a writer, right? They might have even engaged an SEO agency, right? And then they come back and you would come back and you bring all these briefs over. One writer working in-house with all the other demands, I've never seen a situation where somebody hired a writer, even on staff, that they didn't immediately pull them into a bazillion other directions, because people think they don't need a writer. And as soon as a writer is working there, they're like, oh, can you write this for me? Can you write that for me? Can you write all this copy? Like, so the odds that a writer is the right hire to get all this done are pretty low, honestly. What is effective is if you want to do that kind of volume, if you're really going to go for 200, you do need like a partner, but I'd say if you hire in-house, hire yourself a content marketing manager. That is the person with the skill set that can make the most out of your SEO partner, because your SEO partner will come over, that manager will be locked into your overall strategy and can make content calendars based on what the SEO agency advises, plus what your other business needs are. Right? No writer, no poor freelance writer or even a staff writer, no matter how good they are as individual contributors, is going to be able to do that and also produce anything. Like, there's totally separate jobs. So if you get one content hire, it's a content marketing manager. After that, then you can have a writer, because once a content marketing manager is paired in, if you want to have an in-house writer, have them report to that. So you have that layer. They can bring in freelancers because they can manage them. When we work with people, I will tell y'all, like, people come over and like, I will often report into we do our best work when there is a content marketing manager, which often surprises people. It's like, well, then why do they need an agency? But then they come over and they use us to like deploy all of that at scale, because it's what we do all day. And we can produce 200 articles in a year, but an individual writer is not going to be enough. 2 writers is not going to be enough. 3, 4, unless you get them a manager. I can tell you, I looked at BambooHR staffing at one point, and they have a nice, tight, little high-performing team that they are content people. And then I suspect they also still freelance out a good bit. Do not think you can just do this with one poor writer, because they will inevitably, and an in-house writer almost has it worse than a freelancer, because you're not going to be able to resist asking them to write other things. So. Yeah. I would say Gabby asked if it's been done by a dedicated SEO agency or by an in-house team. My guess is going to be both. My guess is I'm inferring this just because I did kind of look and see like job titles and stuff. I'm going to go ahead and say this looks like the work of both.
I agree.
This looks like SEO agency, very good web team, everybody in alignment, and then pulling in resources.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. I see a question about reposting content. So the kind of content is more likely to get reposted. I can't answer that. I don't know if that has much to do with SEO, but the answer is provocative. I guess it kind of does tie back to what I was saying before. If you want your content, your SEO content, to get shared, like, make it interesting.
Yeah.
Make it interesting to your buyer. And most B2B content isn't interesting enough to be shared. What is interesting? Case studies are interesting. People are
opinions are interesting. I would also say, because basically sharing your SEO blog on your company LinkedIn profile with a link, you're not going to get any reach. Like, LinkedIn is going to punish you for sharing a link to begin with, and then people are also not that interested. And so I would also think, if you do want, even though you want to share your blog, you probably want to do some sort of like platform native social media snippet,
adapt it,
a video or a slide carousel is hot right now on LinkedIn, etc. And then if the article actually has an opinion or a story or a person, I think you're much more likely for that to actually get commented and engaged with.
You said something there that I actually think is a really important distinction, actually. So there is posting the link, which I think is what a lot of people do. It's like you can take some content, you just post a link and say, go over. That isn't going to work. However, when you do the work of producing awesome SEO content, you now got this long form piece. You can feed that and you can break that into individual pieces that stand alone. You could actually take that and turn it into a carousel.
Exactly.
Like your 3 benefits or whatever. You make it visual though. Make it visual, turn it into a little video, make it native, like convert it into a native piece of content. And you can still include the link if you want, or the link in the comments, but make it a piece of content that can be inherently consumed as is. That's the secret there. Don't think that you're going to, unless you pay like for ads to amp something, don't think that that's going to get a ton of engagement. It's good in the feed. It's not, I mean, if you don't want to overdo it, but like use it to adapt and create new content. Don't just post the link.
Exactly.
All right, I think we are at time. Anybody else have any last parting questions here for me and Viola? You're welcome to get in touch with both of us. I think I say that Grace posted our LinkedIn things, and that's good. And everybody else wants to post their LinkedIn, and please come and find us. We will talk about this all day. And I think, Viola, you have another session like this coming up on your own, just on your own. And what's it going to be on? Who are you dissecting next time?
Yeah, if someone wants to join, it's on the 30th of November. We're just getting the LinkedIn event ready today. It's going to be about 360 learning. And so they're a very great company as well. So, perfect. Well, thank you guys for joining. It's been an absolute pleasure, jamming with you and seeing so many people live this morning. And I am stoked to see the upcoming sessions.
All right, cool. Thank y'all. Bye.